do a hot take kind of processing video about Don Quixote because Don Quixote was on my secret TBR and I finished it this morning. I'm here with a cup of peppermint tea and a bit of a knitting project. I'm making a name bunting for my friend's baby Rosa. Rosa is about a year old now, so it is a very late name bunting. So the letters are put on, and a bunting is something that you hang up, and it has these little flags, and I have Rosa's name put on there. So the letters are always the most stressful part to me, getting the letters right. And this S, oh my gracious, it took me so long. So I thought while I weave in the loose ends, I could process Don Quixote. It was on my secret TBR, and it is such a tome, over 1,000 pages, and I did not want to say it. I did not want to speak it into existence because then I would feel intimidated. I used the Ormsby translation, and I did it all on audiobook. So for those of you that are listening and say audiobooks don't count, this is not the channel for you. I didn't know what to expect going in. And it's funny that I ended up deciding to read Don Quixote this year because there are several other booktubers that have decided to read it. Christina from Reading, Knitting Books, etc. is reading it. Faith from Faith and Books is reading it. Roz from Scally Dandling About Books is also reading it. And I think I'm forgetting a couple other channels. It just happened that several booktubers are reading it. And I had not thought of it being on my list. I knew I wanted to read more translated literature, but it wasn't one of those, top priority books. But in January, I was just thinking I want a big, hefty classic because I find that if I'm just doing mysteries and children's literature, and maybe some romance in there, that I start to get into a reading slump kind of mood. And I could sense it coming, and I thought, why don't I just think about the classics you want to read. And Don Quixote just came to me. And then once I thought about it too, I'd never known someone that had read it. So in my mind, it was going to be very dense, hard to understand, just overwhelming, and not interesting and serious. And immediately I was laughing out loud. I couldn't believe how funny it was and how contemporary it feels, especially since it was published in 1605, I think is the publication date. And so I was just laughing at so much. And to me, the character of Don Quixote feels like Gilderoy Lockhart from Harry Potter. He takes himself so seriously, and it's not even in the periphery of his thought that there could possibly be people who don't think he's as amazing as he knows that he is. So I'm going to keep this spoiler free, but he's going on this quest. He wants to marry his lady love Dulcinea, and Sancho Panza is his companion, his sidekick, and he goes on this quest with him. And some of the banter between them, and Sancho, he is constantly getting words mixed up. And I've heard that the Ormsby translation really gets the humor of Don Quixote. And to me, reading it, just humor feels so integral to the story. And so I would be curious, kind of sampling some other translations, what it felt like. And I just kept listening. I didn't have a plan for when I was going to finish. I didn't have a goal. And I don't think I touched it much in February, though, because I was working on Ivanhoe and The Prelude by Wordsworth, which I still haven't finished The Prelude. Then March came, started to get slumpy again because I was doing so many mysteries and middle grade and having a blast with those. But I was like, I need something else. And I just kept listening and listening. Now, I will say, one kind of style of story that I don't really enjoy is when someone is telling you about something that happened in the past. And unfortunately, there's a good chunk of this story where Don Quixote is traveling around on his fake quest. I'll call it a fake quest, because he's so delusional. And he meets someone, and they want to tell you their tragic backstory and how the love of their life, the reason they haven't been able to be with the love of their life. And it will take about 2 or 3 chapters. And this happens maybe like 20 times. So that is a lot of page time that is given to backstory. But I also go into classics with a different expectation, kind of knowing that some of it is going to be slow going, and that's okay. It's when I'm reading a modern book and I just feel like this is way too much work for a modern book, because I feel most modern books, there are some exceptions, are never going to give me the same kind of reward that a classic does. So since I feel like that classics stick with you so much and they're so memorable, it's really worth it kind of just sticking with it and continuing on and working as you read. The other thing is, though, that as it continued on, there is a real sadness about this story because Don Quixote is so delusional. It's kind of like if Sam and Frodo from The Lord of the Rings went on a quest, and Sam, 1, thought Frodo was a fraud, and 2, that Frodo didn't really quite get the weight of what Sam was doing and how much he relied on him. And it just made me more and more sad. Kind of, I get to the end of the book, and Don Quixote is, he's just so out of touch with reality that as it's going on, I kind of thought, what is the point of this story? And that sounds super snarky, but I genuinely mean the question. And I'm sure there are some deeper themes, and I'll still be processing this book. It's incredibly memorable, and it's really going to stick with me. And I was really emotional at the end of the book. But like I said, it's a little bit, I just have trouble, like Lord of the Rings, I know it's a whole different beast. It's not even in the same category. But when I think about the fact that that is a book with a quest and all the nobility and truth, beauty, and goodness that is in it, it's just hard not to get that comparison out of my head now. But that being said, Don Quixote is over 1,000 pages long, and I read the whole thing, and I really enjoyed it. It was just kind of like I added it to my secret TBR on a whim, or I started it, and then I was like, oh, this is really fun and hilarious. And I was like, okay, this is going on my secret TBR. And ended up really enjoying it. I do think I'd like to watch The Man of La Mancha, but I think I want to wait a little while. I have trouble when I read a classic. I never feel like watching the adaptation immediately after finishing it. I like to let it kind of simmer and think about it for a while, and then later on go and watch the film. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. One of the funny things about Don Quixote that really stuck with me was one time when Don Quixote gets so mad at someone that he throws a loaf of bread at them. That was a real, that it's just slapstick at that point. Something that I do want to investigate more is kind of the cultural context of the time, because there was a lot of talk about Muslims, referred to then as Moors, and I don't know, kind of the geopolitics of the area, because I realize I don't know much about Spain in that time, and I think it would help give a bit more context. But it seems like it was definitely a really, really big deal to not be the standard like Catholic of the day. That was really interesting to me. And I don't think I have many other thoughts. This is just a short little video. I just wanted to document that I have read Don Quixote. If you're all hesitant about reading Don Quixote, I say go for it. Dive in. Don't hesitate. And I think it's definitely worth your time. It's worth your while. And I think that you will be surprised at what a fun read it is. I can't speak to the other translations. I know that I looked up like which translations people recommended, and people have some very opinionated answers for that. So you will get some very like spirited answers. And that is all about Don Quixote. Feeling good about the classics reading this year. I like reading kind of 60% more frivolous things. Because if I just read classics, I would get in a reading slump. But I know if I just read the more frivolous things, then I get in a reading slump. So I think variety is the key, and really, I don't know, keeps me going. So I was glad to finish that by the end of March, the final day of March, because next month with my patrons, we are reading David Copperfield. So I didn't want this other big classic kind of hanging over my head while I was also trying to finish Don Quixote, especially because they are so very different. And since they are both really big tomes that are close to 1,000 pages, David Copperfield, I think, is not quite 1,000 pages. Didn't want to be reading them at the same time. So I hope you have enjoyed. Just like I said, hot take, just finished it a few hours ago, and that you might consider reading it if you hadn't before. And I will be back with another video soon. Bye.